I felt for the benefit of those of you who were not able to attend all the Zoom conferences that we held beginning last year, where we discussed the issue of citizenship for Burkina Faso. As most of you may know, last year, a group of us, we started with over 300 people, but only about 130 were able to make it. The others, they chickened out. They were afraid of the negative news about Burkina Faso. I knew better. Having been the AU ambassador to the United States, I traveled around Africa, and I have been to countries that we were told they were war-torn countries. So as such, I also knew that Burkina Faso was not what we were being told.
I'd like to take a step back and examine what is happening around Dr. Arikana's efforts, not just at the level of optics or social media firestorms, but at the meta level where systems, incentives, and generational trauma collide. Let's be direct. There is a tragic beauty in the consistent, almost gravitational pull towards intragroup sabotage within the African diaspora. Dr. Arikana has, by all evidence, pursued something both profoundly ordinary, connecting people to origins, and historically extraordinary. A practical, boots-on-the-ground route for those in the diaspora to connect with and ultimately stabilize the African continent through personal stake and identity. What she is doing is akin to what other major diasporas have attempted with varying success. Jews with Israel, Indians with India, and so on. No healthy system emerges without an anchor, a center of gravity, a home that welcomes its far-flung children. Some of Dr. Arikana's critics, perhaps out of some malformed sense of vigilance or latent unresolved trauma from centuries of betrayals and abuse, are quick to see a scam in every initiative. This is what I would call residual adversarial paranoia, a product of repeated abuse by systems that have, indeed, deceived and discarded Black people the world over. But an inability to distinguish between healthy skepticism and self-sabotage, between a necessary audit and a pathological crusade, is a recipe for stagnation and humiliation. The worst part is this. Dr. Arikana's initiative was always exposed to the whim of sovereign politics and parliamentary reversals. The pathway to citizenship in Burkina Faso was not a promise inscribed in stone, but an opportunity emergent from dialogue, subject at all times to official change. When the government changed course, not only did Dr. Arikana not hide the news, she communicated, offered refunds, and processed collective disappointment transparently. This is what integrity in practice looks like, not the absence of setbacks, but radical transparency in dealing with them. If you expect perfection, you will be eternally disappointed by every leader. The more productive question is, did the leader do right when the inevitable setbacks and ambiguities arrived? Did Dr. Arikana enrich herself at the expense of her people? The evidence. She and her team paid their own way, ran volunteer-driven operations, and structured costs transparently. Scan the system, not just the person. Look for patterns, not isolated events. Is there a pattern of extraction, hidden deals, personal enrichment? Or is there a pattern of open books, course corrections, and a stubborn, foolish, beautiful faith in the possibility of Black unity and restoration? To my friends in the diaspora, the Black world's chief weakness is not a lack of talent, but a chronic surplus of saboteurs and crabs in a bucket. Unity does not mean blind obedience to leadership, but it does demand a basic seriousness and empathy, a higher bar for accusation, a willingness to lean in before lashing out. We are running the same destructive scripts, expecting different results. Dr. Arikana's work is, if nothing else, a courageous experiment worthy of patient, eyes-wide-open engagement, not frivolous condemnation. For those who call her a scammer for $500, having tried to run anything with African bureaucracy and logistics, I can assure you, $500 does not go very far, and the value proposition offered was clear, transparent, and frankly generous considering what was included. If you must be adversarial, let it be against systems of oppression who benefit most when Africans and their descendants cannot build a bridge home. Dr. Arikana, for all her imperfections, is building those bridges. Let's not burn them over misunderstandings and overzealous cynicism. The center must hold, or we have nothing. That's the inconvenient, sobering, and, if we choose it, radically hopeful truth.
So the Renegades, 130 of us, we went to Burkina Faso. We spent 10 days in Burkina Faso. We drove by road from Ouagadougou to Bobo de la Sioux. All those areas that people said they were infested with terrorists, we would stop at various places and have lunch and or sometimes just to stretch our legs. Very safe trip between Ouagadougou and Bobo de la Sioux. We spent 3 days in Bobo de la Sioux. Again, back on the road, we came back and we drove back another 5 to 8 hours because we were stopping. It's generally a 5-hour journey, but because we were stopping, it took a little bit longer. Spent a few more days in Ouagadougou, had an absolute wonderful time. Many of us who were traveling, they did videos. They talked about where they were in Burkina Faso and that it was a very safe place. We came back home. And after we came back home, during the trip, we had 4 of our members who had done their DNA. And their DNA said they were from Burkina Faso. They had wanted to know if they could be allowed citizenship because of their DNA. I started advocating for these 4 people to receive their citizenship. I advocated to the foreign minister. I brought the attention to any minister that I came across and let them know, and I introduced them to these 4. We were able to make sure that they were highlighted and they were also acknowledged for being Burkinabe citizens who happened to have been born in the United States as descendants of the formerly enslaved. Upon our return, about a month or so later, there was a letter that came specifically asking, as a follow-up to my request for those 4 Burkinabes, to say, if you have a list of any of your members who would like to become citizen of Burkina Faso, send us the list. We did not expect a large number because of what we had experienced when we went to Burkina. We didn't think too many people would be interested in Burkinabe citizenship. But to our surprise, we thought, well, 50 people would be more than enough. Before we know it, we got to 100. And the requests kept coming. We reached to the embassy. We said, well, the numbers are going up. They said, just send us the list, whatever number you have. In the end, the people who stood up and said they wanted to become citizens of Burkina, there were over 1,000 people. Now, that's not to say all of them were going to be able to afford the train tickets and the overall cost of going to Burkina Faso. Traveling to Africa is not cheap. The airline alone is over $1,000, depending on where you are coming from. So while we knew we had over 1,000 people, we're also very much aware that not everybody was going to be able to afford the trip, particularly the airline ticket. Be it as it may, we started mobilizing African diaspora beginning end of last year. We had Zooms where we had people from the embassy come talk to us about this decision from the president and the offer that we had been given as ADDI members. The embassy addressed us, starting with the acting ambassador, Mr. Dr. Buddha, who addressed us while he was the acting ambassador, followed by when the new ambassador came in, His Excellency General Kasum Kalibali. He also came after he took over and addressed us, and we talked about the citizenship program. People who had questions, they asked their questions, and so we continued to work on our plan. Initially, we didn't have a date because the government was working on a date that they felt would be most appropriate. And then eventually they gave us a date in November because there is a program on the 1st, I believe, and 2nd of November that they want us to be part of. So that's how the date was set for those the week before and the week after, time around those 3 days where the government is having its program that they wanted the diaspora to participate. Again, we continued to have Zooms. We would update the ADDI members. We would share with them the information. We would talk about Burkina Faso. And so it was. We were planning on going to Burkina Faso to get citizenship. People were expected to send in their clearance, security clearance. People were supposed to bring in their passports and all the necessary documentation that you could use if you're going to be getting citizenship. Now, there are some that never really send in their security clearance, but which is fine. That also lowered the number out of the 1,000. It lowered the number of people who were going to qualify to go to Burkina Faso. And everything was going well until I believe the 26th, Friday, the 26th of September, when I got a call from the ambassador saying, Ambassador, I have bad news. The parliament met and they felt that everybody should follow the procedure that the parliament has put together that would include the ADDI. We had thought our program was always a separate one. It was not part of the process the government was going through, but Parliament voted to say everybody must follow that procedure. However, they were going to make an exception for ADDI members instead of insisting on the 5-year residence requirement in Burkina before you can qualify to apply for citizenship. They were going to allow those on the list to be given the permanent residency. And then once they can show that they have a home or they have started a business, they can also have a short pathway to getting their citizenship. But that was the decision that the parliament had made. It was kind of hard for me initially because everybody was geared up towards going for the citizenship. Even the embassy itself, they were very disappointed because they worked very hard to make this trip a possibility. And so we all got over our initial shock. But slowly as we begin to process it and begin to really understand the decision that the parliament made, there is some reasoning behind taking that two process pathway. But be it as it may, I got the call from the ambassador on a Friday, and I called a meeting with my team on Sunday. We met and I advised them of what my conversation with the ambassador. And then this decision was made that we must let those on the list know that there has been a change and it was a parliamentary decision and that it was completely out of our hands. So we called for a meeting with all the people on the list. And on Monday, we had a meeting in the evening where we updated everyone about the process. People were upset. Some of them were crying. And I understand fully because I also had gone through that when I got the news from the ambassador. But be it as it may, this was a parliamentary decision. It is a government. It is a country. They can make their decisions, as they see fit. And of course, it's a parliament. It's not one person who is making that decision. So I'm sure there was a vote. Different people had different understandings of what it meant to have the diaspora coming to Burkina Faso. But be it as it may, this is where we are. And the process goes on. We offered everybody that doesn't want to go, those who have paid their $500 registration fee, they're welcome to have it back. Those who have paid their $1 a day for Africa, which is the 365, we just prorate that and refund you whatever the difference is. And so that process is going on for those who have decided they don't want to go.